Well, medics in Gaza say at least 10 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on a school and children's hospital in the city. Local health authorities say that since Israel resumed heavy bombardment of Gaza last month, more than 1,600 Palestinians have been killed. And for more, we are joined by our Middle East correspondent, Matthew Doran. Matthew, what can you first tell us about this new wave of airstrikes by Israel? And is this a sign that the IDF is indeed intensifying further its campaign in Gaza?
Well, Girish, good evening to you. Certainly we've been hearing from Palestinians in the Gaza Strip over the last few days saying that those strikes have intensified, and they have been some of the most intense and deadly since Israel resumed its bombardment of the Gaza Strip back on the 18th of March. Yesterday there were a series of strikes which took out a number of claimed Hamas targets across Gaza. They were also targeting things such as earth-moving equipment and trucks, which the local authorities say were being used to help with the clean-up efforts and to retrieve bodies that are still buried under the rubble after 18 months of war, but which the IDF was saying have been used by Hamas as part of its terrorist activities, including helping to get some of those Hamas fighters into Israel back on October 7, 2023. What we've seen in the last few hours are attacks, including the one that you've just mentioned, hitting a school in Gaza City. This is an area where, or a facility where a number of Palestinians were sheltering, having evacuated from their homes, and they have now been subject to this intense strike in the early hours of the morning. Some of the eyewitness accounts from there are pretty graphic, pretty gruesome, talking about the charred remains of small children being dragged from that school. So certainly there has been an intensifying of those strikes in the last couple of days or so, and as you mentioned, it is a horrific death toll since those strikes resumed on the 18th of March. More than 1,600 people reported as being killed by local health authorities in just a matter of weeks.
And in another facet of this war, the health ministry in Gaza is saying that it's been forced to halt its polio campaign for hundreds of thousands of children. What might be the consequence of something like this?
Well, local health authorities and some of the humanitarian organisations behind this campaign say it could risk the lives of 600,000 children across Gaza. Polio is a disease borne by a virus that has been largely eradicated around the world, but which has reappeared in Gaza as a result of things like water facilities, sanitation facilities being destroyed during the course of this war. Think about open sewage pipes in the streets. This is a breeding ground for a variety of viruses, including the one that causes polio in children. In the past, this has been a concern. Throughout the course of this war, there have been discussions about how to ensure that the children of Gaza are protected from polio, and there have been a number of temporary humanitarian pauses in the fighting to allow parents to bring their children to clinics across the Strip to get their shots, but not this time, it certainly seems. And that was also, when those truces were organised in the past, humanitarian aid was still getting into Gaza, which it is not now. Israel's blockade of the Strip has run beyond 50 days. We are on the 51st day of that blockade now, and humanitarian agencies have been sounding the alarm bells for a number of weeks now, saying that supplies of things such as medical equipment, medicines, also food and the like are running desperately low, and that Israel needs to lift that blockade immediately.
And on this blockade, Matt, what can you remind us again what the restrictions are being imposed on aid that is so desperately needed in Gaza?
Well, Girish, there is nothing going into Gaza. Every crossing that was allowing aid through during that 6-week ceasefire, which kind of turned into an 8-week ceasefire of sorts, started back in late January. All of that aid was allowed in during that period, but even before Israel resumed its bombardment of Gaza on the 18th of March, the Netanyahu government had stopped all supplies going into the Strip. It said that this was a bid to pressure Hamas into releasing the remaining 59 Israeli hostages still held by the group in the Strip, 24 of whom are believed to be alive. But it is the civilian population in Gaza which is paying the price here, not getting access to food. We have seen things like bakeries being run by the World Food Programme, for example, having to shut down because they do not have the supplies to continue operating. And we've heard renewed calls from around the world, but in the last couple of hours, calls from the governments of the United Kingdom, of France and of Germany, saying that there needs to be an immediate lift to this humanitarian blockade, that enough is enough. And but for his part, the Israeli Defence Minister Israel Katz, he is saying that there is no breach of international law here. He's insisting that this is a situation where there was enough aid that was supplied during that ceasefire, and that if there is an apparent need into the future, then Israel will try to get those supplies in, but bypassing Hamas in the process. He has provided no details as to how that approach would go forward, and that is why we are now in this sort of stalemate, I guess you could say, which is having dire consequences for the population.
Okay, Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran, thanks very much for that update.